Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 104 of the Trademate Sports betting podcast, a betting preview of this weekend's Champions League final. And I mean, you could probably tell by the intro, maybe we can have a quick recap of the Europa League final. And we'll also go through George's picks from this week. He's taking us to the Championship playoff and also a game in the MLS. George, how are you, mate? Nice little 3 for 3 last. Oh no, it was 2 out of 3, but it was very, very close to being 3 out of 3, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was indeed. We did quite well last weekend. The one I was particularly happy with was the West Ham to win and to score 2 or more goals, and that was at 2.74, I believe, and that landed quite easily. To be fair, I thought it was a great price on that one. Yeah, really good last weekend in the Premier League. So yeah, happy with the performance and nice to end on a high.
Yes, very good as always, mate. And yes, you must have enjoyed the Europa League final.
I did for a number of reasons. One, no more than obviously I didn't want United to win, so it was great to see. Epic scenes. Ollie's at the wheel. He's doing his thing. He's back. But no, for me, looking beforehand, I still couldn't believe Villarreal were 4-1 going into it with United just below evens. United correctly favourites, but the disparity between the two sides was not reflected in the price. And I mentioned on another podcast that without Maguire, United have only won by 2 clear goals on 2 out of 8 occasions, and one of those was against Derby County in the cup from the Championship. So I knew it'd be tight. Villarreal, very good side, and obviously it's abbreviated to the UEL, meant to be Europa League, but it's more like the Unai Emery League, isn't it? He's won what is it? He's won 4 now. Yeah, you can abbreviate it to the Unai Emery League, and you'll still get the same thing. It's great, but
I think the more impressive thing is that he's never lost a 2-legged tie in the Europa League. He's 23 out of 23 or something like that. Is just unbelievable.
Insane.
I know people are probably going to think I'm just a bitter Arsenal fan, but he is not a great coach. I'll say that as honestly as possible. He's not that great. So I don't understand how he's done it.
I've got to disagree massively there. He's a phenomenal coach. You do not win 4 Europa Leagues in the manner that he has if he's not a good coach. The only sort of anomaly in there is the fact that it's Arsenal. Every other club he's been to has been fantastic on the European stage. Yes, Villarreal finished 7th this season in La Liga, but they were still, a very good side. They went through this entire Europa League campaign and didn't lose a single game. They drew against Arsenal, and that was one. But apart from that, they won 13 out of their 14 games leading up to the final. You've got to be a good coach if you're going to do that. I don't care if it's the second tier of Europe. You've got to be some coach to be able to do that. If anything, I think Arsenal needed to give him a little bit of time, and they were very quick with the chop. If you give Unai Emery time, he's going to build something. And I think you were very hasty when you got rid of him. Even at the time, I kind of thought it was questionable. I know you weren't doing well, but I think it was very reactionary to get rid of him. And now he's gone to Villarreal. And, they've obviously won the Europa League and knocked out Arsenal on the way there. So, yeah, I don't think you can say he's a bad coach. I think he's a brilliant manager.
I mean, he might be good for other teams, but I'm sorry, he was atrocious for Arsenal. No, I mean, okay, I'll give you one game to go and watch, mate. It was Arsenal versus Watford. It was it would have been like round 5 of last season, so the 19-20 season. And yeah, just go and watch that game, mate. And you cannot tell me he's a good manager. No, in all seriousness, he was pretty bad at Arsenal, and I know that we've still been pretty bad since, but yeah. Anyway, mate, we could go down this rabbit hole for a long time. But I mean, congratulations to Unai, mate. You've got to be happy with the results at the end of the day. You beat Manchester United. I think it was their 4th year in a row without a trophy or something like that. So
yeah, 4 years in a row, and it was well deserved. They exploited United's weaknesses. United are very, they're so good on the counter. That's why they do well against the bigger teams, such as PSG, such as Man City most recently, because those teams come onto them and leave gaps at the back. Villarreal stuck in, forced them wide, nullified them in the middle. Perfect game plan.
Yeah. All right. Quiz question of the week, mate. Which team has scored the most goals in the Champions League this season? We'll get to the answer at the back end of the podcast. Yeah, relatively easy one there, but might surprise a few people. You never know. Let's talk Champions League final, though, mate. How good is this? An all-English final, and what do you know? Your favourite team, Manchester City, doing their thing, coming into this one as pretty decent favourites. I've got the odds up on my screen. You can get best odds of about 1.95 at the moment for Man City. The draw sits at about 3.4, 3.5. And Chelsea, outsiders in this one, you can get as high as 4.7, maybe a little bit higher than that in a few places. As we know, Chelsea, I mean, the funny thing is they beat Man City in early May, but since then they essentially stumbled into the top four with losses to Arsenal and Aston Villa recently. They also had the FA Cup final loss to Leicester City. They are very much out of form, you would say, going into this final. City, on the other hand, you would say they've almost been waiting for this day for a very long time, having wrapped up the EPL title. I mean, they won the EPL title a couple of weeks ago, but they really had it won about 10 months ago. And the most, I think, as I was kind of saying before, the most interesting part of this final is, although Man City are clear favourites, Chelsea have beat them in their last two outings. So, I mean, before we get into the nuts and bolts, mate, how are you feeling going into this final as a true citizen?
Bricking it. Fundamentally, but
it's a long time in the waiting, isn't it, for you guys?
Yeah, it's thing is, I've said that before on this podcast, that the Champions League is about key moments in the game that you need to go your way. And it seems this season we're finally having one of those, a competition in the Champions League where City are getting the rub of the green more often than not, where in the past everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Or whether it be a combination of Pep overthinking things. You think of that Sterling goal in the last minute against Tottenham to send us through and only to be ruled out. And it's little fine margins like that, and that have obviously stopped us. But no, we're finally there after just an absolute ridiculously good display against PSG in the semi-finals. I mean, that Ruben Diaz performance defensively is something that will live long in the memory. I think it was just fantastic, and Mahrez showing his worth as well. I mean, funny enough, last season I was the first to slate Mahrez for either not, giving the ball, not being part of the City way, kind of being very selfish and losing possession. He's been sublime this season. He's been absolutely fantastic, and I think he'll have a big say in this game. But yeah, I mean, looking at this one, I've tried to kind of put my bias to one side and look at it objectively as if I'm just a neutral fan. And obviously it's been difficult, but I was looking at the odds, and similar to kind of the United Villarreal game actually. And I agree that City should be favourites, but under evens, it's a Champions League final with everything on the line. I don't think the odds necessarily reflect the chances for both sides. I think under evens there's no value on Man City there whatsoever. But then in the reverse of that, yes, Chelsea have beaten City twice in recently, and obviously City have got their strength in depth is second to none. But in both of those games where Chelsea did win, City, I wouldn't say City had a weakened lineup, but they didn't have their preferred lineup. For example, if it was this game, if it was this fixture of this magnitude, the two sides that face Chelsea on those days wouldn't be the side that play Chelsea in this one whatsoever. And also, let's not forget, in the most recent league meeting where Chelsea did win, City should have run away with that. They're all over them, scored. Then Sergio Aguero tried the Panenka, did not come off in the slightest. The most embarrassing attempt at a penalty I think I've ever seen. If that goes in, you'd argue that City are probably home and dry anyway. But yeah, with this one, I mean, I was more nervous in that if Chelsea failed to qualify for the Champions League, the motivation is just even higher for Chelsea to win this one, so that they get that, to win the Champions League next season. But if anything, it was kind of perfect for me in that, they made the Champions League anyway, but they also lost on the last day of the season with a pretty abject performance, to be honest, and against a very good Villa side. So they've already got Champions League assured next season. They're on it. They've kind of dipped off towards the end of the season, which I think Tuchel should be worried about. But yeah, just sort of diving through the stats here, you look at just sort of a brief overview. City have won their last 7 Champions League matches, and they've also scored at least 2 goals in all of those 7 as well. So they always seem to find the back of the net in this competition. City haven't got any injuries going into this one, which seems weird to say. So we've got everyone available. But Chelsea are sweating on the fitness of Edouard Mendy and N'Golo Kante. But apparently Kante managed to train today somewhat, so I think it'll be touch and go as to whether he starts. But a player like Kante, if he's fit, you've got to have him in the side, surely. Chelsea are undefeated in 11 of their last 12 Champions League matches. But City have outperformed their XG in the Champions League. They've scored 25 goals from an expected 23 expected goals for. Meanwhile, Chelsea have underperformed in that department. They scored 22 goals from an expected 24 goals. Looking at the sort of Champions League finals of times gone by as well, the last sort of 5 Champions League finals, 3 of them have seen both teams accumulate over 1.5 cards each. But it's worth noting, I think a couple of them were obviously Madrid derbies, but then you've got the likes of Juventus that were in it, Bayern, PSG, and those 2. But as I said, Mendy, you might miss out through injury. And of the 8 games that he's played in the EPL and the UCL, so if Kepa comes in, of the 8 games that Kepa has played this season in both the Premier League and the Champions League, Chelsea have won just 2 of them. They've drawn 3 and they've lost 3. And Kepa's conceded 6 goals in that time too. So it's no doubt to see since Mendy's come in, he's really reassured that back line of Chelsea is much more dependable than Kepa. So if they have to go with Kepa in this one, I think that could be a bit nervy for that back line who are so used to being able to depend on Mendy. But yeah, as we've already mentioned, in the 3 games these 2 have played this season, there's actually been 26, 20 and 27 fouls committed. I do quite like the fouls angle in this one for value. And the referee is Antonio Lajos, and he's much hated by Barcelona and Real Madrid fans alike. But given how tense this game could be, they're offering 6-5, which I believe is 2.2 on Unibet for over 22.5 match fouls. As I said, in the 3 meetings this season, there's been 26, 20 and 27. And I just think, as I said, with the magnitude of this game, with Lajos in charge, everything that's on the line, no one's going to want to give an inch. They will stop attacks as soon as they start, just to avoid that. I think 2.2 on Unibet for over 22.5 match fouls it's a very low line in my opinion. I'd have it closer to maybe 24.5, 25. But for over 22.5, I'd have closer to 1.9. So for 2.2, we're getting value there in my opinion. Yeah, both teams saw 2+ cards in one of their earlier meetings, but as I've already mentioned, it's going to be a tight game, and Lajos is absolutely mental with cards. He is ridiculous. In his last 20 games officiated, both teams have seen at least a card in 17, and and with these 2, and as I said, I keep mentioning how tense it is. It's 11-8 for both teams to see 2 or more cards on Bet365, which is 2.38, and that presents massive value to me. I think that's a very big price. I'd have that potentially a bit lower. So, yeah, my favourite 2 picks for City Chelsea are over 22.5 match fouls on Unibet at 2.2, and both teams to receive 2 or more cards at 2.38 on Bet365.
Good man. Look at that. He's really looking forward to a dirty game.
Just call me the postman, mate. I always deliver.
I was going to ask, from a Chelsea perspective, do you think it's kind of a whole new scenario, I guess? I mean, they're coming into this out of form, but do you kind of rub away all the bad forms just because it's a big final? But I mean, you probably could have said the same thing for the FA Cup final, and you could have probably said the same thing for last week's top 4 final, if you want to call it that.
Well, yeah, and I mean, if Chelsea don't win this one, if they lose it, have they really done that well? I mean, yeah, the performances have been there, but they haven't won a trophy since, spending, £200 million in the summer. I know Frank Lampard was there, for the majority of the season. But everyone was raving about Tuchel when he came in. And don't get me wrong, he has done well. That Chelsea side were much more organised, much more difficult to play against. But you're not judged on individual games throughout the season. You're judged on what you've won. And yeah, they weren't expected, I'd say, sort of after half the season when Tuchel came in, they weren't expected to win anything due to their start. But then you've got to look at the positions they then found themselves in. So they've now found themselves in a race for the top 4 that looked fairly comfortable at one point. They found themselves in an FA Cup final, and now they find themselves in the Champions League final. If they fail to win this, have they really had a successful season, given the opportunities they've had to claim trophies? So if they finish it potless, in my book, it's been a ridiculously poor season for them, and something's not quite right. I mean, I think Werner will come good next year, though. It annoys me, and it really pains me to say it, but obviously after watching a lot of Bundesliga, when Chelsea signed Werner, I thought they bagged themselves an excellent striker there, and he's not proved it this season. He's been very unfortunate in certain instances, and it's a crisis of confidence. But when he gets that confidence back, they've got one hell of a player on their hands. But I'm just hoping he stays a bit quiet for this one. But yeah, it's difficult. I mean, Chelsea they have to win this in my book to have any chance of saying they've had a good season.
Well, it's an interesting debate because, I mean, if you told a Chelsea fan that they'd made the Champions League final this year, they'd probably say it's a pretty good season. Like, that's punching well above what they were used to do. Top four, maybe they weren't expecting to win the league, so maybe they'd be happy with top four. But I guess it's the way in which they made the top four.
Yeah, is Roman Abramovich investing 250 to 300 million pounds just to get to finals? He's there to win them, and they've been there in two. They're in two this season. They've already lost one. They lose this one as well. Questions have surely got to be asked.
Yeah, no, certainly, mate. I'm not going to argue against that because out of all the teams in the EPL, they more than Man City, you'd have to say they invested very, very heavily. It almost seemed like they were desperate for success, and they just got every single player they could get that was good, young, and up and coming. But they didn't really think much beyond that. They just thought, I'm just going to get all the best talent in Europe, bring him to Chelsea, and somehow Frank Lampard will put the puzzle pieces together, which obviously didn't work. But I mean, I still think some of those talents like Havertz and Werner, they can, they're class players, and I think they can turn it around in the second season. I mean, Nicola Pepe is a great example of that. Yeah, he might not be worth 70 million, but at the start of this season, Pepe was probably worth 30 million after his first season, and now he's probably closer to being worth 50, 60 million or something like that. Maybe not in today's market, because we're talking when he was bought for 72 million, it was a heavily inflated market compared to the COVID market. But so it's a very unfair comparison. But I think it's very much possible for those guys to turn it around. But yeah, mate, anything else on this final? Any other sticking points for you or anything interesting? How do you think maybe Pep will set them up, because he is notorious for an interesting formation or an interesting tactic every now and then? Or do you think he's very much settled? Because it has been a very settled season, you'd say, for Manchester City. They found a system and stuck with it for the majority of it.
But it's a system that's been kind of forced upon us, really, with the fitness of Aguero, and we've kind of had to play that false nine just to kind of get through, and it seems obviously to be working for us. But yeah, I'm not going to sit here and try and guess what lineup Pep's going to go with. He's got so many decisions to make. One thing I would say is, I think both times we've played Chelsea, we've not had Kyle Walker, and I think his pace, the way that Werner hangs, that's why Werner's offside so much, because he is rapid and he hangs off the shoulder. But if you let him get in and he's onside, then you're in trouble. And I think Kyle Walker could play a very key role in this one. But yeah, I'm not going to try and guess what Pep does. But the one thing I will say is the amount we learnt from that Lyon game last season, when we were dumped out embarrassingly by Lyon because Pep overthought every single aspect of the game. I think he's learned a lot from that, and we've seen that in our games in both legs against Dortmund, against PSG. We've gone there and know, yes, all right, you've got to be relatively reactionary to what they're going to do and try and counteract that, but you've got to impose your game on them and basically say, the way we play, you're going to play our game. This is what we're best at, and this is how we're going to approach it. And we saw that against PSG. We can be dogged, but we'll still play good counter-attacking football. We'll still utilise our skill set. We'll be very technical. We'll create opportunities, and we stick with the same way of playing. Something that we didn't do in seasons gone by. And I don't think Pep will change it here, regardless of the fact that it's finally a Champions League final. I think we'll play in a much similar vein as we always do. And by the law of averages, Chelsea have beaten us twice in a row, so surely it's City's turn to put one over on them now. But the other thing I was looking at is first-time finalists in the Champions League don't tend to fare so well. So I'm hoping we can kind of break that curse. Obviously, look at PSG, look at when Chelsea first got there, and yeah, it didn't end well for them. But yeah, I'm hoping we can break that duck and get the winner.
Hope you can too, mate. Hope you can too.
We're all City, really, aren't we?
We're all. I mean, they're just a harmless, team that you just love to see to win everything. We don't want to see Chelsea Chelsea win another trophy. It's never nice.
No.
All right, buddy. We can call it quits there, I reckon, and we can move on to your first match of the day that you really wanted to look at yourself, mate. And you're taking me to the Championship playoff final, I guess you can call it.
Yep.
Brentford once again in the playoff final against Swansea City. Our man Matthew Benham. Let's hope he can get the boys over the line this time, eh?
Yes, mate. I'm taking you to Wembley as this playoff final goes head-to-head. I'm looking forward to this one, and I think it's Brentford's time to shine. Just kind of looking at it, obviously they were in the playoff final last year. We're massively unlucky. Obviously, losing out, I think it was to Fulham in the end. But I was looking at an interview, and Pontus Jansson, who's a Brentford defender, and he stated that last season's defeat at this stage, it will give them huge motivation, and that they're so mentally strong going into this one. And some of the injuries they get, they don't care because they've got people coming in. They're so hungry for it that it doesn't even matter. And he had a slight pop at Ollie Watkins as well, and Ben Rama actually saying that they were both quite emotional when things weren't going their way, and it used to hamper the team. But you're saying we haven't got that problem now. So it strikes me that they've got everything they need to get in ahead of Swansea. And I think they're a slightly better side than Swansea. They've got Swansea have got their quality, no doubt. You look at the likes of RU and obviously got Horahan as well. But I just think Brentford, in terms of the way they are as a team, the ethic they've got and the season that they've had, they won't want to come here and go, not succeed again. It just can't happen. I don't think it's in their mindset at all. And I think it's Brentford's time. Looking at the stats, Brentford, they're top scorers this season in the Championship with 82 goals, and the top scorers tend to go up. It's just kind of the trend. The last 6 meetings between these two we've seen around 280 booking points. It's quite a ridiculous stat, and that includes 2 red cards. But Brentford have conceded the second fewest shots per game in the Championship on average this season, just 8.4 shots per game. Meanwhile, Swansea City have averaged the fourth least shots per game on average of 10.1. So I don't see Swansea getting that many opportunities in general, just like the way these you play. Even I think that the last outing against Barnsley, it was a long range effort. It was a cracking goal, but you're not going to score plenty of them. They're not going to get a lot of opportunities to see them go in the back of the net. And Barnsley had the better share of that game, really. Swansea sort of hung on for that one, and Brentford are a much better side than Barnsley, in my opinion. So yeah, for me, it's just looking at actually here in that game, Swansea were outshot 12-4 by Barnsley in the second leg. And like I said, Brentford have got that attacking prowess. They've got Ivor Toney up top, who's just absolutely lethal. He's having a fantastic season. I believe he's top scorer in the Championship. And I think Swansea will pay the price if they're allowing their goal to constantly be peppered by the likes of Toney and co. So for me, I think there's great value here in a Brentford win inside the 90 minutes at 10-11. That's 1.9. But I also like the Asian over 2 goal line. So obviously we need 3 goals to win it. But if there are only 2 goals, we get our stake back. I think there could be goals in this one. So yeah, my picks for this one: Brentford win at 10-11, but also the Asian over 2 goal line at 1.875. You can find both of them on Bet365.
All right, nice. I've got a few bookies here who might be able to get better than, was it 1.91 that you quoted?
It was 1.9. I got 10-11.
Yeah, there might be a few bookies here. I mean, it's for you Norwegians and Swedes, you can get a bit better on BetSafe and Betson. FBet, Leon Bets. Sorry, just scrolling through the Trademate feed here. So yeah, there's a few places there where you can get a little bit better, and maybe on the exchanges too, you can get a few points higher. But yeah, mate, I'm very excited for this one. For all Trademate sports lovers, we've had a nice little article of Matthew Benham. It's probably our most successful article on our blog about the professional sports bettor, who's the owner of Smart Odds, and it's always a good time of year for our blog. Every time someone types in Brentford, they go straight to the article sometimes. So it's the blog is flourishing, mate. The blog is flourishing. So yeah, hopefully this year. I mean, it's maybe it's just good if they make the Championship playoff final every year, so we get a little boost every year, and everyone goes and checks out the article. Maybe they'll stop looking at it once they make the Premier League. But yeah,
get more exposure then, surely, especially if they're finishing towards the top half. Get even more exposure.
Exactly. Well, this time next year, mate, you wait. What if they win the Premier League? Then Trademate Sports will really be able to.
Let's not go too far.
All right, mate. Let's go to the MLS. Your first pick last week only just lost in the last few minutes with that penalty. This week, mate, you are taking me to New York. New York RB or Red Bulls versus Orlando City.
Yeah, so I'm taking you to the Red Bull Arena. Just to get right into it, the pick that I'm going for, I'm going to have a plump on under 2.5 goals, and you can get that at 1.9. That was what I managed to find earlier, best price at 365. But the stats behind it, you've got Orlando City now on a great run of form, unbeaten in the last 6. However, their top scorer, Nani, who United fans will remember, is obviously kind of like the Tesco value Cristiano Ronaldo when he was here. But he's been ripping it up in the MLS. He's been fantastic. But he's suspended for this one. He's serving the second of a 2-game ban that was handed to him by the MLS just before their last game. The Red Bulls centre-half Reyes, he's also going to miss this one through suspension. So a suspension apiece. The top scorer for Orlando after Nani is Akindele with 2 goals. New York Red Bulls top scorer as well. He's 18 years old, Caden Clark, and he's got 3. So no one's kind of setting the field alight in terms of finding the back of the net for these two sides. There's been under 2.5 goals scored in 5 of Orlando's last 6 games. It's not a very high scoring team, but they're kind of defensively sound. Meanwhile, the Red Bulls have seen under 2.5 in their last 3 home matches against Orlando City in all competitions. But yeah, Orlando, like I said, they were defeated in their last 6 MLS matches, got off to a fantastic start. Whereas New York Red Bulls, they're still on the table. They've had back-to-back defeats, and it's kind of seen the slow start to their season continue, really, which isn't something you'd associate with the Red Bulls of old. But Orlando, they've been flying. They're unbeaten through those 6, sit second in the East. They have only managed to score once against it. Last time out, they managed to score once against Toronto, and that Toronto side is completely depleted. It's been ravaged by injuries. They should be scoring more past them, and they still were only able to score 1 goal. And obviously, that's the one that Nani missed. So without Nani, it just seems to be that they seem a bit toothless. So I don't see any side running away with it. I don't see there being a hatful of goals. And given the fortunes of both clubs so far this season, I think Orlando would be confident of getting a positive result, but New York Red Bulls will make it hard for them. I just don't see this one being a goal fest, and I think it'll be quite tight and cagey with finishing being questionable without some key players. So yeah, for me, under 2.5 goals at 1.9 was a potential bet I quite like the look of in the MLS this week.
All right, awesome, mate. I think you quoted 365 before, but I think they have dropped in odds, so you predicted that nicely there. I noticed Bet Victor. I can just get this up on my screen at under 2.5. So yeah, 1.93 at Bet Victor at the moment. So I guess you're looking for any price above 1.9, something like that.
Ideally, or potentially maybe 1.85 is the lowest I go. Anything under that, I wouldn't touch it. But yeah, ideally, what you want around 1.9, 1.91.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're still widely available. I'm just looking here on the Trademate Sports feed. Pinnacle, Exchanges, BetChris, Coral, Nordic Bet. I mean, the list is endless of books still able to get that 1.9 slate. So, yeah, widely available for all you MLS lovers, mate. And how's all the Copa America previewing going, mate? You getting lots of information around it, ready to go?
Yeah, it's going all right, but as is anything, there's always obstacles. Obviously, I don't know if you've seen, but the unrest in Colombia at the moment, there's been obviously mass protests against their president and stuff. So they've originally, it was meant to be held in Argentina and Colombia. It was a dual hosting, but they've taken it away from Colombia now, and the Colombian FA have come back and said, can we postpone the Copa America until November? So it's just kind of waiting to see what sort of happens with it. I don't think it will. I don't think they'll allow that. I think it may just be held in Argentina this year. But yeah, just kind of keep my eye on what's going on out there. But no, apart from that, research is looking good. So I'm putting a big preview together of all the teams, to give you a bit of info on each side, each nation, with a couple of key players and players to look out for. As I mentioned on it, there's only going to be 10 teams in it this year because Australia and Qatar were invited to participate in it. But I think the Asian FA have kind of brought forward qualifiers for the World Cup, so they won't be able to feature in the Copa America, and as such, Australia and Qatar have pulled out. So it is only a 10-team tournament this time, which obviously sees odds kind of drop a bit, but gives you a much more clear indicator of how things are going to pan out.
Here's a big question for you. What's more farcical? Eurovision, Australia being in Eurovision, or Australia being in the Copa America?
Oh, it's got to be Eurovision, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, they're both ridiculous calls. I mean, maybe Eurovision is a bit of a joke, isn't it? So maybe
we may as well not be in Eurovision. We've got 0 votes.
Yeah. Do you want to hear something sad? Neil was telling me, I don't know if you listened to the podcast the other day, he actually was trading Eurovision. So there you go. That's when you know you've hit the all-time low.
Oh my word.
He said there was £5 million or something matched on Eurovision. He said that's, I mean, I don't trade, mate, but he was saying that that's more than most Premier League games. So pretty decent.
He's a braver man than me. Braver man than me.
4 million of that was Neil's. He loves his Eurovision. He was just telling me all about it, telling me how he's shocked that Italy didn't win, or whoever didn't win. Oh, whatever.
Italy won it, and it was just horrendous. But yeah, can we please?
I think it was France. I think it's France. He was not happy about winning it. So he's very shocked. Anyway, yeah. For more of that conversation, head over to episode 102. I think it was of the Trademate. Mate, best bet of the weekend out of the. I guess you've gone through Champions League final, Championship playoff, and also that fixture in the MLS between New York and Orlando. What's your favourite out of all of them?
It's going to be a tough one, but I think I'm going to go with Brentford in the over 2 goal line on the Asian markets, over 2 goals. So, like I said, if there's only 2 goals in the game, you get your stake back. If you see 3 or more goals, then it's a winner. So that's at 1.875 on Bet365.
Good stuff, buddy. You can find George at CGeorgeGamble. And I've got to write this down. Your other Twitter handle for just your personal picks, I guess, similar to what you do on this podcast.
Yeah. So that's George_CGG. So obviously C George Gamble, the initials of that.
George_CGG. You know what? While we're here, give Nigel a follow too. I mean, he hasn't rocked up for a couple of weeks, but go give Seeley_Nigel a follow on Twitter. And yeah, premiersportsplays.com, sorry. That will be where George will be hosting his Copa America picks if the tournament goes ahead, that is. Mate, let's finish off, as always, with the quiz question of the week. Which team has scored the most goals in the Champions League this season?
Well, it's between 2 teams, isn't it? It's got to be between City and Bayern Munich. So I know Bayern Munich had a few big ones early on the season. City have had a couple of fairly big wins and have been in the competition longer. Let's stick with the old faithful. Let's go with City.
No, mate. Bayern's got the better of you. It's actually Bayern, and they got 27 goals, and City are only on 25. So it was. I mean, it wasn't even that close. No. Chelsea and PSG with 22 goals each. So very interesting. They've played an extra 1 round or 2 games actually than Bayern. Yeah. And Bayern still got the cookies, mate. So anyway, there's always next week. Well. Yeah. All right, and that'll do us for today, mate. Next podcast coming out for all you loyal listeners. I actually talked a bit of cricket betting with a man named Ed Hawkins, who's a journalist, author, bettor of cricket. Really, really interesting conversation about all things cricket betting for all you people that have been hitting me up for a long time about getting someone to talk about cricket. So that was good fun. But thanks for listening, everyone. Make sure you do a quick rate and review of the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, like. It always helps, guys. And if you're looking to implement some of the strategies we talked about today and weekly on the podcast, value betting ones especially, start a free week trial of Trademate Sports. George, mate, you've been terrific once again, mate. Looking forward to the Champions League final. And, everyone get your prayers in for Manchester City.
Like I said, we're all City, but no, cheers for having me, and I'll see you again soon.
See you, bud.